Ta she'ul puch chiri chuwi jun juyub. Chiri shkikuch wikib. Konogel K'iché Winak Ruk Amak. The last third of the Popol Vuh completes the shift from mythical origins to historical narrative as the gods almost entirely withdraw from the tale, the great task of settling in the world then the onus of the K'iché Maya kings. If the ancient Maya had once spoken in a common tongue, as linguists suggest to have happened 4,000 years ago, by this point in the story the groups had diverged so greatly that they were no longer mutually intelligible, split into truly distinct languages. This was a time to lament the separation of the peoples in speech and space. As the account enters historic time, it lists the Maya ethnic groups surrounding the K'iché', many of which they would attempt to subjugate. It also introduces the Tam and Ilok lineages, allied with the three K'iché' noble houses introduced in the last episode. But before the political exploits could continue among the Mayan nations, they paused to literally summit atop the mountain named Jaq'awitz, named after its cleared, blanched peak. They convened to witness the sun's first rising. The three K'iché' founders lit copal incense as ritual offerings to the sun. Once its first rays appeared at last, their heat was so awesomely powerful that it baked the earth, instantly drying the surrounding mud. The original bodies of the K'iché' patron gods were petrified, reduced to stone idols. And the sunlight also turned the original forms of dangerous animals to stone, making them less menacing to humanity than they would have remained. Even the sun that now appears in the sky is no longer its actual body, but rather a less harmful reflection, its light cast upon a cosmic mirror. After the sunrise, the K'iché' stayed atop Mount Jaq'awitz to build a citadel. They were still like barbarians, clad in deerskin and foraging for insect larvae and other basic foods. Yet the K'iché' were formidable. With stealthy tactics and animal mimicry, they ambushed travelers and soldiers from other nations to steal their precious metals and sacrifice their captive bodies to the patron deities of their noble houses, Tochil, Jaq'awitz, and Awilish. These three gods in return promised that the K'iché' houses would dominate the lands and peoples like wildfire in their metaphor. When the other nations had had enough of the attacks on their people, they conspired to take the three deities of the K'iché' noble houses and pray to their sacred figures. They wanted the power these gods had conferred to the K'iché' to expand and conquer on their own terms. To defeat the K'iché' and get their gods, the rival nations launched a siege upon their citadel at Jaq'awitz. The god Tochil heard this and informed his followers of the enemy's plans. The founders devised plans of their own to defend the Jaq'awitz citadel, which already had the advantage of a sheer, narrow path to its mountaintop location. At last the K'iché' used the precious metals they had been stealing from enemy soldiers. With them they adorned mannequins to resemble fully dressed soldiers, decoys mounted around the citadel to deceive the approaching troops and avert their fire. In a cunning ploy of biological warfare, the K'iché' army also set up hollowed gourds filled with hornets along the steep mountain path to Jaq'awitz. Open as the enemies crossed, the gourds released the wasps upon the unsuspecting soldiers, so overwhelmed that many lost their balance and plummeted to their deaths. Humiliated and defeated, the rival nations had no option except to surrender and submit to the K'iché' kingdom. As with the hero twins in a previous episode, once the founders had fulfilled their work on Earth, they resigned from it, to let their descendants continue K'iché' culture. The four founders gave their family farewells, and they left a memento of their presence in a ritual bundle wrapped in deerskin. They then departed to return to the land where they had been created. The noble houses abandoned the citadel of Jaq'awitz and settled among the southern Guatemala highlands, often at the cost of heavy war and conflict. However, at the citadel of Qomarkach, the K'iché' would regroup to bring together the 22 lineages from the three original houses, and 2 from a new group called the Sakik Lords. After several generations, an especially powerful figure named Feathered Serpent would emerge from among the nobility. Although the moniker is best known by Quetzalcoatl, after the Mexican creator deity, This lord was Qulqumats in the K'iché Mayan language. Throughout his account, Lord Qulqumats is renowned for the might of his Nawal, his companion spirit, with which he performed powerful acts of supernatural quality. He could transform into a serpent, eagle, jaguar, even a pool of blood. His vision was profound like that of the original creation, such that he could see beyond the horizon and into the future. He had such powers because of not only his practice of priestly austerities, but also his possession of the true Popol Vuh, the source of divine insight, the first and only mention of the book's title in the text. The last Chronicles in the Popol Vuh detailed the feats of the generations up to the time of the author. They tell of the conquests of tributary nations, and further establishments of local kingdoms, as well as the titling of their authorities. These final pages additionally catalog the major priests and temples dedicated to the three K'iché patron gods, Tochil, Jaq'awitz, and Awilish, and they list the administrative titles among the lineages for each of the four noble houses. An important and abrupt shift takes place with the sudden arrival of the Spanish. The story alludes particularly to Pedro de Alvarado, notorious for his ruthless strategies against the Aztecs in Mexico and the Maya in Guatemala. Then the Spanish magistrates became listed alongside Maya nobility, as the K'iché contended with a new reality after becoming conquered subjects themselves. As the history reaches the author's time, the story comes to a close. It ends on a reminder that the true Popol Vuh, the original version, may be lost, but it exists somewhere in the world. Shere Kuri mi shutzinik chi konochel K'iché, Santa Cruz Upi. Now that the epic is complete, join us for our final episode. We will conclude the Popol Vuh playlist with today's mask.